Today on Locked On Rockies, a conversation about patience, one-run ball games, and hey, the performances weren't great, but I do got to give credit for the Rockies for one thing. They do seem to build a pretty darn good clubhouse culture.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 7th day of October in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, then you're in the right spot. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Apologies for the off day yesterday, just a little bit of a scheduling mishap there, but we're back in action here talking to you about the Colorado Rockies. Going to read some of your comments, of course, as we always do. And I just kind of wanted to go before. I know a lot of times people might be turning to that player evaluation, and I certainly want to get there. We are going to talk about that. Now I'm going to kind of do a little bit of that here towards the end of the episode. But I just was watching the American League Division Series between the Tigers and the Mariners, and just kind of want to highlight some things that I was taking away from that series. But above all, I really think that, and this is not an obvious statement, it's not something that we've ignored before, but the one-run ball game is just such an important thing. And the ability to be clutch, the ability to come up big in the big moments, and what we've seen in the postseason, in which that's arguably the closest series that's going on right now. The Dodgers have, kind of handled the. Actually, that's not true. I'm sorry. I had not seen the score. Philly ends up making it a one-run ball game there. The Brewers out in front right now of recording. They're up by 4 in the 8th here. And then, of course, Mariners Tigers has been a one-run ball game each time. So I just want to talk a little bit about that and just kind of looking at the records of teams that made the playoffs and how they were in those games. And just as when we're looking for a benchmark type of thing and to see if the Rockies, for example, are making progress next year, I think that the how they perform in the one-run games in these close games will be a good little testing point. It's a good little measuring stick, at least in my opinion, for the team. So we'll do that, and of course we'll continue the conversation of the big stuff. Is how long is too long for the Rockies when it comes to making decisions and making moves here. Before we go any further, got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So let's just kind of start there. My question, I guess, for you as the fans here, is you've seen teams making moves, and kind of one of my big things that kind of stuck with me after breaking it down and talking with you all throughout the week last week is it's just like, okay, great that this is the possible steps, but why was the decision? Why wait until now? Where, like, what has the conversation been like behind the scenes, and what has the what have the Rockies discussed with Walker coming in? How much influence and how much has he said through a transition period? Because again, he wasn't really fully in the role until the season concluded. Obviously another moment there where you can say the interim or transitionary or whatever, that you could say that I'm sure he was very involved in what was going on. But I did see, as much as I saw some doubt, sorry about that. I was dealing with a little frog in the throat right now during recording. But anyway, the why the timeline is just one of those things that doesn't seem to add up to me. And the easy answer kind of could just fall into classic Rockies. This is just how they operate, dysfunctional, all that stuff. Very likely, and probably most likely, that the true story there. But it also is, it's just like, okay, if this was the plan, maybe it was to see who was available, how many options you truly had at the end of the season, who moves on from who's, what type of options really open the door. Because again, I think what's interesting here, and what I think I would have liked to hear a little bit more confirmation of when it came to the Rockies moving on from Bill Schmidt, is Also saying that the other decisions, I'd like to just got a little bit more confirmation that, coaching staff, manager staff, that's all being evaluated as well. And again, I'm still of the camp of the Rockies are probably going to end up with Warren Schaefer as their manager again. But I hope that there is being an evaluation. I hope that right now maybe it's looking at and evaluating it, comparing, looking at starting to build your options of who's available. But on the flip side of that is, the longer you wait, the more days of inaction, the more opportunities are going to pass you by. People are going to be jumping at the right opportunities. People are going to be making the moves. They're going to be taking jobs that they want to go for, and you got to be able to be quick and make that and make those shifts and make those moves. So I guess I'm just in a weird kind of process where it's just like, okay, if the Rockies are actually sitting there and saying they're like, okay, we are doing a comprehensive evaluation of everything. We're seeing who's available as the season winds down. There's still teams playing that might have some stuff might free up or something like that. You never know what might happen until the season actually comes to a full-on close, and it's really the offseason. So maybe that's type of the part of the thought process. But I still just am a little bit uncomfortable by that, in the sense of how long did it take to admit that, how long did it take to look at the writing on the wall this season and start planning to rectify this or start moving into different directions and start formulating the new plan basically for the Rockies? When did that actually start? Because if it didn't really start until the season ended, which I highly doubt, because at some point you looked at how September was going. At the latest, I would say the Rockies had to have looked at how September was going and start making the decisions there, whether they wanted to make them publicly or not, whether they wanted to actually announce things and yada, yada, yada. Different story. But like, if you're the Rockies and you're still sitting there and saying status quo is okay in the month of September, you're way far behind than we thought. And so I hope that there was talks and transition and plans and things that started in motion sooner rather than later. But I do wonder how much of an impact, how much did the hot start after the All-Star break also change the approach and the philosophy for the Rockies going throughout these things? So I think that to be honest, I would still like to see some action here happen soon. I don't think you can't fully make the evaluation yourself. You need to bring in someone and let them cook. You need to let, as we've been saying throughout last week, and as we will continue to say throughout this process, is not only does it need to be an external voice, it needs to be an external voice that is allowed and encouraged and supported in making the change and doing the things differently in order to get this team back on track. That's the type that it's a multi-stepped it's a multi-step process that we need to see from the Rockies throughout this offseason in order to build the confidence that things are going to start moving in the right direction. Again, you still need to set your mind that next year is going to be tough, and next year there's a very easy chance that the Rockies lose 100 games for the fourth season in a row. That is not out of the realm of possibility. But we need to see, it's like, okay, clean house, move new staff in, new approach, new philosophies, new things coming in. You got to allow that some time after that. But you got to start making those decisions and start letting the new voices come in and start working things out their way if you're actually committing to doing things differently. And so we'll see. So I think the clock is starting to tick here, and I think the Rockies are going to need to start making some decisions sooner rather than later. All right, I wanted to now zoom in a little bit on my my focus. One of my focus is from the American League Division Series between the Mariners and the Tigers and how it can relate to the Rockies as well. We're going to do that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. You can see all the benefits of Monarch Money. Why? Because it's going to help you put all of your finances in one place. It's your personal all-in-one financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. And I know you're busy out there. We all are busy out there in one way or another. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without what is that? Ever touching a spreadsheet. You can maximize your investments, increase your saving rate, easily review your finances with your partner and or financial advisor, which keeps a clear view of your financial health week to week and long term. And that is that security and confidence you want going forward. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Rockies fans or Locked On Rockies listeners, you're back for segment number 2 of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much again for making us your first listen of the day. You can also make us your first view of the day by checking us out on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where we love to read your comments and fire off your Rockies hot takes, including Luke, who says, Paul, appreciate you. Do you think Walker is the driving force that has pushed the Rockies to do the things that experts believe they should do? In your opinion, has his presence ensured the Holiday pick, McMahon trade, and Schmidt parting? To me personally, no. Mostly because all of those moves were obvious. All of those moves shouldn't have necessarily taken Walker Monfort's influence to decide. In the draft, if Holiday was available, you take Holiday. That is just clearly that was the best pick for the Rockies at that stage, the best type of guy to bring in here as the Rockies continue to try to crack the nut of pitching at Coors Field. Certainly you could have, some will argue, always go pitchers, always draft pitchers. No. I don't think you miss out on an opportunity to bring someone that's got a connection, like that type of connection, someone that really can actually bring some sort of game-changing vibe. If Holiday turns out to be who Holiday could be, and that is doing a lot of stretching. There's a lot that has to happen between now and him, dominating the major league level and Rockies fans, falling in love with another Holiday. There's a lot of work in between there. But I don't think there's an argument for anybody but Ethan Holiday. And I don't know if if you're whether it be Bill Schmidt's call or not, I don't think Dick Monfort was going to let that opportunity pass up. McMahon trade. No, that had to happen. Ryan McMahon, and the conversation has to come up again throughout this offseason and closer to the trade deadline is Ryan McMahon was not playing a role in the future of the club. And that's not to negate what McMahon has done for the Rockies and did for the Rockies. It's just the honest truth of where the Rockies are at. And so, no, that's a move that I would hope that you're making if you're Bill Schmidt. I would hope that if you're Bill Schmidt in there, it doesn't matter about you worrying about your job or what Walker says, you're making that move because that move made total sense. And you were able to get a little bit for it too. McMahon, a hot and cold guy, with a bat that's not, the sexiest thing on the trade market. The Rockies were able to do something about that. So I think, and then again, the Schmidt parting is no, that had to be done. There was a reason. I mean, you cannot, while the Rockies certainly could have pivoted and gone a different direction than anyone else would have anticipated, you cannot reward this year. Everything at this stage of the Rockies is up to evaluation. And when you look at it plain and simple by the numbers, when you look at it, the development of the team, when you look at it, the construction of the roster, the Rockies have declined the entirety of Bill Schmidt's tenure. Some interesting draft picks and some possibilities, certainly. But when you look at the contracts and when you look at everything, Bill Schmidt's time and tenure has not been successful, especially in a massive transitionary period as the Rockies moved on from, moved on from a core they clearly should not have moved on from. So no, I really don't. But I like where your head's at. I mean, I hope that maybe it is the case that he's thinking that way. But I think all of those things are just too obvious. But I just don't think that, in a weird way, I just don't think that that's like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't think that's necessarily his influence, but at the same time, it really could be. Who knows with this team? So, thank you so much again, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Of course, as I was saying, really appreciate all off season long. I want to hear from you, Rockies fans. I want to know what's on your mind. Keep firing off your Rockies hot takes. Letting me know what's going on in your thoughts when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Okay, so one thing I thought was I've been watching the Mariners Tigers series, thrilling series, really good baseball. And obviously, I'm trying to like pick some things that I'm like, oh man, what can we take from the Rock and it just apply? And it's just like it doesn't apply because it's a really tough series when you're talking about just really good pitching going up against there and teams that do have some offensive threats. But it hasn't necessarily been an offensive focused series, but it's been about clutch moments and getting the job done and putting the ball in play and doing those little things that we kind of talked about time and time again as we talked about the Rockies letting lead slips, letting things get away, missing out on their opportunities with runners in scoring position, getting behind early. There's just like, but when I've been watching this series, as both teams have now pulled off a very close, single digit run victory here in a very tight series where basically every out has mattered a great bit, and every run even more. I was just kind of curious to see, okay, these are one-run games. And in the broadcast, they were talking about how good the Tigers have been in one-run games. And the Mariners have been in a ton of one-run games. And it just goes to show you, as people talk about it being a long season and and this and that about the regular season. This statistical category, I think, is one of those ones that sticks out in a big way about your team when it comes to how a season pans out, whether it be making the postseason, missing the postseason. And I think it shows a sign of how you're able to handle the pressures and the situations that you find yourselves in the postseason. And I think both of these teams highlighted that in this series and highlighted it in a big way, where it's like, the Mariners are able to, they're held, but they get the home runs. They get just enough from the offense against Skubal there. And then boom, the Tigers are responding. It's a tie ball game. Both of these teams so experienced there. They're two of their most important hitters come up in Cal Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez, back-to-back doubles late in the game after the Tigers had just answered back. So I'm in when you're talking about one of those like benchmark things to be looking at for the Rockies in 2026 is how do they succeed if they're successful in these games. And mind you, the win-loss record still might not be pretty. But if they're playing and successful in one-run games, that's a good sign. That's a sign of a team staying in it. It's the sign of the team, coming up clutch in big moments, and it's a sign of it being competitive baseball throughout the game, or a comeback situation if it's a multi-run lead or something like that. All in all, when you're playing one-run games, you're in it. I think is kind of just the easiest way to kind of to summarize how I think about it. So I just wanted to look at how many of these teams are playoff teams, or how many of the playoff teams are where they are, not solely because of this, but in part because of their one-run of their record in one-run games. And it's not surprising to see that if you're a playoff team, you're successful in one-run games. And I think that helps you if you're in a situation like Mariners and Tigers, where you have a lot of that experience. I do think that gives you a little chip on your shoulder, because I don't think either one of these teams has blinked in this series. It just happens to be the ball breaking one way or the other in game 1 and in game 2 for both the Tigers and the Mariners as they split a series. So to just kind of look at, again, your playoff teams here. And of course, the AL East has 3 of them there on the American League side. Blue Jays 27-20 in one-run games. The Yankees 23-22. Now, obviously, that's close to 500, not a great record, but still above 500 in the playoffs. Small sample size here. Red Sox on the flip side, 23-27. And it's obviously these one-run games and how the results of the playoff games have gone, especially in this series. But that Yankees Red Sox series was close. That Yankees Red Sox series, there was in the 2 out of the in 2 out of the 3 games, it was only a 2 or 1 run game. 1 run difference there in the ball game against the Red Sox in game 2, 2-run loss in game 1, and then shutting out the Red Sox in that game 4. But boom, setting yourself up, extending the series by winning the 1-run game. That's what kept the season alive for the Yankees there, and them setting themselves up and giving them that extra chance. The slight difference between those two teams when it comes to game 2 right there, the Yankees above 500 in those 1-run games, Red Sox below 500 when it comes to those 1-run games. Is that the only reason? No, but again, I think that's just one of those interesting, when you're with how many numbers and how many factors and how many things to look at in Major League Baseball. I think it's a talking point, and I think it was certainly a factor in that series. The Guardians 26-20 in those 1-run games, and then the Tigers 21-12. 21-12. So we're talking, that's why I was talking about the broadcast making a big deal about these 1-run games for the Tigers. That's insane. 21-12. Not as many as 1-run games as some of these other teams, but to be that effective, to be so good, and to have that winning percentage when it comes to 1-run games, and then to find yourself in 2 1-run games in your series and you come out 1-1. That's a great sign, a positive sign. And of course, the Guardians winning and being clutch in big moments. That was key to their postseason run, and even getting there and getting their opportunity to have a shot before, of course, falling to the Tigers. And then the Mariners, 31 1-run wins in baseball, the most in baseball this year, 31 wins. So when you're talking about the big moments, when you're talking about things to take away, when you're talking about confidence in your team, and that's how the Rockies need to be. They need to be confident in these moments. They need to be confident in these situations. They need to be able to not buckle. They need to be able to turn to their guys that live for these moments. Munoz here in those 2 games, he's doing stuff that he hasn't ever done in his career, but being successful. And again, it's not like these teams have blown up in big ways like we've seen in the other series. It hasn't been catastrophic things. It's been a very tight, every pitch, every moment, everything counts. And that's how it's going to be going forward as these 2 teams who, grind it out. And like I said, I just think I'm just fascinated, about those teams. What makes those teams so good is being clutch in those 1-run games. But just because you're good in 1-run games doesn't necessarily guarantee you success in the postseason. The Padres 30-23 in 1-run games here, the second most 1-run games wins in baseball this season. Didn't help them out of the wild card round. Dodgers 25-24, but they've been in cruise control here, looking pretty good against the Phillies. Brewers 28-20. It's just a testament to the strengths of these teams as well. When you look at it, when you're talking about the Brewers and the Padres, of course, good bullpens, great pitching, being able to keep those games tight and lock it down there. But just when you're kind of comparing it to teams that struggled in 1-run games and what could have happened, Mets 23-26 in 1-run games, Marlins 22-22 in 1-run games here. The Braves 21-35. I mean, that division could look completely different. Same with some other wildcard teams and who's in there. Reds, they did end up making the postseason 22-22 there. Cubs, pretty good, looking pretty good, but on the ropes here, 25-19 in those 1-run games. St. Louis did have a solid record. Another example of just because you're successful in that area doesn't mean you're going to get there, 26-21. And then, just zooming in here for the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, a prime example here, 21-28. The Rockies 18-23. So for the Rockies, it wouldn't be a drastically big difference for things to be, turn things around. But you're feeling a lot better, and your team's in a lot better position if you're able to turn even half of those wins around. You're at least sitting in the 50 wins. You're not sitting there scraping the bottom of the barrel and flirting with worst team of all time if you're able to perform better in those one-run games. So again, I think that's just a small stat or one thing that we can look at in 2023 as if the Rockies are winning one-run games, it's a good sign. Not like it's gonna, mean they're a shoo-in for success and winning, being above 500 and making the playoffs. But it's coming up big in the big situations. And if you're good in those one-run ball games, and that becomes a foundation for a developing team, when you get to those big moments, you're going to be prepared for it. And I think that's a good sign. And I think the teams that are better and good in one-run games are going to be more successful in the postseason. Okay, we went way long there, so got to take a quick break before we put a quick bow on this one and wrap things up on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Gametime. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live, or really any sporting or any event. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team, your band, your favorite things in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Cues, login screen, surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage and gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast and easy, backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. You can see your exact view from your seat, one of my favorite features. You're going to know exactly where you're sitting, exactly in the location, so you know everything to expect, all while getting a great price, faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way you're going to buy tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Gametime today. Locked On Rockies here. Got to wrap things up pretty quickly because we went a little long in segment number 2 there. But as I mentioned, we will get to our recapping and talking about player performances. But as always, Purple Row doing their annual offseason breakdown where they rank all of the Rockies on the roster. And they focused on Orlando Arcia today at number 52, negative 1 WAR on the season. So, again, not necessarily a dynamite performance baseball wise, but I do got to give credit where credit is due for the Rockies. I do think it is a strength of this team for them to have a clubhouse that doesn't seem to be full of drama and at each other's throats and a bunch of stuff during times of turmoil. Now, you could say that maybe that leaves them without a cutting edge or an intensity or people that are familiar with what those winning clubhouses are like. I just kind of like that it's guys that can get along with each other and guys that do enjoy being around each other and going to work and putting in the work with each other as they navigate it. It's, hey, they're the ones that go through the tough seasons too. As much as we're watching it, they're living it day in and day out. So I just wanted to read here from the piece here. Talking about Orlando Arcia brought leadership versatility to a reeling Rockies clubhouse. And this is from Renee Descartes in Purple Row here. And I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit here just about, again, the piece highlights the fact that it wasn't necessarily a great season. He appeared in 62 games for the Rockies with 182 plate appearances. Arcia / 203, 242, 302 with 3 home runs. He hit 3 home runs and accumulated an OPS plus of 42. Most of what Arcia brought, in addition to versatility, however, was leadership for a young team. Obviously, we're not super happy with the results per se, Arcia said in late August. But as a whole, we're continuing to celebrate our success and continuing to grow as a team. And I think that's the biggest thing I'm proud of. Interim manager Warren Schaefer acknowledged Arcia's clubhouse contributions, referring to him as one of our best leaders. However, that's not how Arcia sees himself. I don't consider myself a leader per se. I'm here as a guide for these young guys. Anything that I can help with them as a professional, I'm definitely going to do. That he provided leadership was certainly Ryan Ritter's experience. He teaches me a lot, the young second baseman said in September, but Arcia also sees potential in a young Rockies team. I think this is a team that's very young, but it's very talented. I think it's a team that's going to continue to grow. And while it appears unlikely that Arcia will be with the Rockies in 2026, he's appreciated his time in Colorado. I'm excited to be part of that right now, and just glad that I can help them out again. Hey, like we said, the performance didn't really match up, but I do like it when a vet comes in here. He embraces that role, gets along and enjoys a Rockies clubhouse that seems to get along, helps these guys continue to grow into professionals. That stuff does matter, and that stuff does help for a guy that's had major league experience like Garcia. Certainly, we would have liked to see more results on the field, but that type of stuff is helpful for a young team like the Rockies. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of your day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB and Locked On MLB Game Night. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.